let's take a look at 4 of the same items just painted a slightly different technique. So I have often seen people paint light colors over dark colors, and they have so much trouble with that technique because it doesn't work. The secret is to have a light colored base, preferably white. You can use a light gray, but the darker the base, the darker the tone you will have. Now I have airbrushed 4 of the same piece to show you what you can do. Actually, the 4th one is actually dry brush, and it gives a whole different look. And I'll show you that technique toward the end. But the first 3 are entirely airbrushed, like you see here, and each one is airbrushed slightly different. Again, the 4th one is a dry brush, and the technique on that looks completely different. Now, which one is correct? Which one is better than the other? Neither. It just depends on the look you are trying to achieve. Now, beginning with the dark base colors, if you're using a bright, beautiful yellow like this, or any other color, and you paint over black, well, this is what's going to happen. It's just not going to look correct. And you'll need so much paint that you still won't get it to look correct. So this is what's going to happen if you spray or brush a bright color over a dark base. Your yellow, even though it's bright, it does not look bright. It's going to look muddy. It's going to look an ugly, funky green yellow. But watch what happens when you spray over a white base. The yellow looks yellow. What a difference, isn't it? And this is using an airbrush. I use an airbrush because I like the way the finished result is. Can you brush it on? You can, but you'll need a lot more paint, and you can erase some of your details. Airbrushing leaves a nice thin layer that allows it to look, well, store-bought. Can you achieve that with a brush? You can. It takes a little bit longer, a lot more practice, but again, you still need a light colored base for any of those bright colors. Now let's move on to the second piece that I've painted with an airbrush. I left a little bit more of the black showing through. We're still going to use yellow, but this is to show that no matter how much of a thick layer of bright paint you're using, yellow, red, blue, green, whatever, as long as there's black showing through, it's going to remain black. It will only change the tonality of that yellow or that blue or red, whatever color you're painting. So if you want to use the black in your favor, you can. You don't have to use a second or third color to change the tones, unless you are truly trying to convey a different tonality. But take a look here. The yellow remains yellow because it's on the white. Anywhere there's black showing through, it just looks darker. So you can create a dramatic or more dynamic look if that's what you're trying to achieve. Now let's go on to the third piece. And this third piece is also airbrushed, but I only added it to the very, very center of those portions, so it looks like highlights. So I left more black showing through. Again, the more black you have showing through, the darker the shading is going to be, the more dynamic or dramatic it's going to look. Is it wrong? Absolutely not. It just depends on what you are trying to convey on each piece that you are working on. And sometimes you have to combine the techniques to make it look like what you're trying to achieve. Now this is what I bought off of Amazon, and these are brushes that are meant for dry brushing. They're actually meant for miniatures, but you can use them for whatever it is you like. These are round head brushes, so you can dry brush in any angle, and they come in different sizes. As you can see there, there's 6 in this container, held in this cardboard container, and they are numbered as well too as far as the size. I'm going to use the number 5, this one right here. And this, because it has a round head, I am not limited to 1 or two directions. I can use it in any direction that I want to achieve the look that I want. So I'm going to take a little bit of the paint that's already in the airbrush and wipe off most of it onto my mat and then dry brush the yellow onto the leg. Now, because it is dry brushing, it does dry a little quicker, but you still have to build up those layers. The more layers you build up, the brighter those white areas are going to become, or the yellow. The dark areas are still going to remain dark. You will not change them to a brighter tone if you didn't apply the white. You see the red there? It's going to stay red. It's just going to change to a different tone of red. Now, make sure you allow it to dry before you add any other coats, and you seal it before you actually add any other paint, any other color on top of that. But you can achieve a nice, smooth transition. But let's move on to what the rest of it is going to look like. So now let's move on here. Here we are. All four have a similarity of yellow. They're all different techniques. Now, the red is another color that can be deceitful. Some people think it's just very, very overpowering. Well, it can be, especially if you spray it over a light color. But if you see the black where I sprayed it on there, it's just a dark red. If that's what you want to see, that's fine. That's the technique you'll use. But if you want to see a bright red, then you need to spray down some white. Now I'm taking the piece here that I sprayed with the airbrush and allowed a lot of the black to show through. It doesn't matter how much paint I use. If it's black, it's gonna bleed through. It will only stay bright red on the areas that have the white base. Or if you want to use a light gray or a darker gray, it's going to change the tonality of that red paint or whatever paint you choose to go with. I'm using the premium Vallejo paints. It doesn't matter what paint you use. The concept is still the same. You need a white base to have a bright color, especially if you're going to color chain a figure from top to bottom. Now let's go with a fully sprayed white. And here we're spraying red. It doesn't matter where you go with the red. It's going to be bright red because there is no black showing through. And the nice thing about this, it's going to look awesome. Now, you can go back in and add all the details you want. I'm not going to be doing that on this video. I'm only showing you what you need to get a bright color on a dark base. Now let's go on to this one. This one does have some of the black on the edges showing through. A little harder to see here on the video, but there is a slight difference from one piece to the other. This one is not as bright. It does have the edges that are black. And again, if it is black showing through, you're not going to change the color of it. You're just going to change the tonality of the paint you're using. Again, it isn't wrong if that's what your purpose is. Sometimes, again, you have to combine the techniques to be able to achieve the look you are striving to get. Now, what's nice about an airbrush, if you're freehanding it, you can blend in some of these colors and change the second or first color that you laid in. Is it something that's difficult to do with the dry brush? It can be if you don't have practice, but it can be done. I'll show you that in just a moment. So you made it to the last and final piece, the one with the dry brushing. And yes, I did brush white all over it. It makes it much easier to be able to change the color of it. Now, by adding red to this, we can see that the dry brushing still needs layers of color. It still is going to keep black where the black is bleeding through, and it's only going to stay bright red where the white is. Again, it's not a wrong technique if this is what you're trying to achieve. It gives it more dynamics, more drama, but it's not wrong. It's just different. And it does give you a nice, smooth finish. But that's the great thing about these round head brushes, Because they are round, you can go in any direction you want. You are not limited to up and down or left and right. You can even do circular motions. And these brushes are actually inexpensive. And the finished look looks really, really good. Overlay it onto that first color. It can be done. It takes a little practice, but because it is dry brushing, it's really only going to highlight the raised areas. Getting into those recesses and other textures requires a little bit more layering and practice. Can it be done? Absolutely. It looks fantastic once it's done correctly. You'll really like the results. Now, by the time you see this video, I'm going to be on vacation. And guess what? I'm taking soups with me. I hope this video helps you out. We'll see you next time.